Netanyahu refuses to allow the state of Israel to look into what actually happened on October 7th, and his extremist government is arming gangs in the Gaza Strip who are stealing aid from the trucks. I'm Kasky from The Bulwark, and we are going to talk even more today about the international pariah state of Israel and everything that's really going on. I'm in Los Angeles, and if you watch the rest of our videos, you'll know this is the second different location that I've been in this week where there is a bar cart behind me. I don't drink. I just happen to have friends who like having a nice bar cart. So don't let this be a reflection upon my personal activities. It's just because my friends like to party. You know who's really having a party right now, so I can transition smoothly, is Bibi Netanyahu, who is doing everything he can to avoid a ceasefire, because a ceasefire means journalists get into Gaza, and journalists getting into Gaza means the actual toll of the devastation that has been rained down upon these people is going to be shown to the entire world that's already turned their back on the state of Israel. The world has done this with this country and with this extremist government, where Netanyahu is one of the people who's less aggressive. Netanyahu, who is one of the most violent leaders in the modern world, is one of the chiller people in the Israeli government. So once the dust settles on this round of all the killing, it's important to note that while a lot of people in the pro-Israel world are going to act like this was Netanyahu's doing and that, you know, the next government is actually going to be super nice, most of the people in the Israeli government are way more aggro and mean than Netanyahu is. That's not to act like Netanyahu is some sort of peacekeeper, because he is anything but. He is, dragging this conflict on as long as possible and making sure that these hostages are not returned home safe to their families, and that these starving men, women, and children don't get any food. Of course, he is anything but a peaceful person. But if you see some of the shit that the other people in the Israeli government say, it is actually nuts. It's hard to believe that there could be somebody who is worse on this than Bibi, but unfortunately, that's the majority of this country's government. But before we go into anything, I want to show you guys Netanyahu talking about aid making it into Gaza on the Nelk Boys MAGA Bro podcast. Let's have a look.
Why do they say Israel's like starving the people of Gaza?
Well, because we're trying to get the food in, and we let food trucks in, and guess what happens when we let them in? Hamas steals the food, takes the good chunk for itself, then they jack up the prices, and then they sell the food to its population, to its hungry population, if they give them at all, and then use the money that they take from their own people to recruit more killers into their terror machine.
First of all, I kind of wish he wasn't as charismatic a speaker as he is, but a lot of these kind of rotten world leaders are. But I want to get into this because I don't see enough people talking about this. Israel is arming local gangs in the Gaza Strip to, quote, weaken Hamas. But the efforts are propping up a dude who is accused of looting aid trucks, according to a new report. Let's also keep in mind that when the IDF talks about how it's Hamas who's stealing the aid, they have come out now and said they don't actually have any evidence of that. Mind you, it sounds rather characteristic of Hamas, but it goes to show how many lies we're getting from the Israeli government and from their military intelligence, or, as we're about to talk about, the lack thereof. But there's a guy named Yasser Abu Shabab, please excuse me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, whose Popular Forces militia is active in southern Gaza. And they have openly challenged Hamas, and this guy Yasser has touted himself as a liberator overseeing humanitarian aid distribution within the territory. Now, this guy is operating in IDF-controlled territory. A UN official told the Washington Post he has a full glide militia up and running, fully backed by Israel. Now, this whole setup came at the same time as Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu revealed his military was actively arming influential gangs in Gaza, again, as a way to oppose Hamas. But while Netanyahu didn't name Shabab's group directly, the clan leader's base is in an area controlled by the IDF, and his militia has been caught on video several times operating alongside the IDF. Now, this guy who runs the, quote, Popular Forces, he said that any accusations that he's working hand in hand with the IDF are Hamas propaganda to undermine him. But, I don't know. It kind of doesn't seem like that in this commentator's opinion. International aid groups that operated in the Strip have accused Shabab and his armed men of systematically looting the trucks delivering food and essential items en route to refugees. Right now, let's take inventory of this conversation. We've got Netanyahu telling MAGA Bro podcasters that it's Hamas stealing the aid. Israel just not letting in the aid, period, unless it's for a quick PR photo shoot. And these guys who are not Hamas, who are some sort of Hamas opposition, stealing the aid. And to whose surprise, they're also apparently backed and armed by the state of Israel. Like we said, Shabab denied these claims, but he then later admitted that his men raided half a dozen aid trucks out of desperation, the New York Times reported. Both Shabab and Israel have claimed that it was Hamas behind the systematic raiding and looting of the aid trucks, but I don't know. It seems as though what we're learning about this information makes a lot of sense. Israel wants there to be some sort of opposition to Hamas. They want to back this opposition and arm this opposition, and I doubt they are particularly offended by the concept of this opposition stealing aid. But I want to get further into how Netanyahu is handling this, because people don't talk about this enough. People in independent media across the board don't actually talk about this enough. And in independent media, you have the opportunity to say things that you are not allowed to say elsewhere. Leave a comment down below of something. I don't fucking care. But I want to talk about how Netanyahu refuses to allow an investigation into what actually happened on October 7th, because I personally have been very confused about October 7th and how exactly it happened. The IDF and the Mossad are kind of regularly touted as the most advanced military and intelligence operations on the entire planet. They know more about us than we do. We get tech and AI equipment from the people who give them their weapons and their systems that they use. Like, these are supposed to be the cream of the crop intelligence and military people. And yet somehow, on the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, October 7th just kind of happened, and the IDF and Mossad apparently just had some sort of blind spot. I think that's kind of weird, and I think that warrants an investigation by the state of Israel into what could have possibly led to what is very, very likely the biggest intelligence failure in modern history. The Mossad not seeing this coming from a million miles away? How could you possibly begin to explain that? Well, you can. As early as 2018, Israel caught wind of Hamas's battle plan to invade Israel from neighboring Gaza, but Israel's domestic intelligence agency did not consider it a realistic threat. And this is the main conclusion of an investigation by Israel's Shin Bet agency into the colossal security failure of the Hamas-led attack on October 7th. It was the single deadliest day in Israeli history, when thousands of Palestinian attackers killed nearly 1,200 people and took 251 people hostage. Shin Bet is the name of the organization that conducted this research. Now, mind you, this could have been done by the state of Israel, but again, Netanyahu is doing everything he can to prevent this because he knows that he'll be held accountable. The report sparked a retort from Netanyahu, who has deflected personal responsibility in the security failure. And Hamas's decision to attack when it did was a confluence of three factors: Israeli practices regarding religious Jewish ultranationalist activities in mosque compound in Jerusalem, which is also revered in Judaism, Israel's treatment of Palestinian prisoners, which has hardened under Israel's much more far-right government, and the perception that Israel's social cohesion was weakened largely because of how many people in the state of Israel were taking to the streets to protest Netanyahu. This all happened when the walls were closing in on Bibi. And then the October 7th attack happens. Bibi gets a unity government where all of his rivals are coming together to rally, which makes sense. After a traumatic, devastating attack like that, you want some sort of sense of national unity. Israel is a nationalist country as it is. But I am not surprised Netanyahu is trying to keep people away from looking into this intelligence failure, because it's going to be associated with him. Israel had obtained intelligence of Hamas's battle plans in two iterations, once in 2018, once in 2022, but the agency did not translate it into an actionable threat. A series of signs in the months leading up to October 7th was dismissed. There were a lot of things that were a part of this. I mean, think about it. Like, Hamas terror people, they had to be trained. They had to organize. This was an attack that didn't just spring up one day when they were like, oh, hey, we're a bunch of anti-Semites. Let's out of nowhere just attack the... No. This was an extremely advanced operation from Hamas that took planning. The IDF, the Mossad, monitors the Gaza Strip like a fucking hawk, and a lot of weapons and equipment needed to be moved into the Gaza Strip. A lot of people need to be mobilized and trained. October 7th wasn't an attack that just came out of the void, out of nowhere, where they just fucking teleported into the state of Israel. This was a plan that took a long time and a lot of influence from outside actors. Hamas didn't just magically conjure up this attack. There were a lot of factors at play. There were a lot of people involved with ensuring that this terror could happen. And it's something that warrants an investigation. So the Shin Bet and the military have conducted their own investigations and submitted detailed reports on the operational failures that led to October 7th. But Netanyahu refuses to allow a state commission of inquiry to examine the failures of Israel's leadership that contributed to the attack. In a speech to Israel's parliament, Netanyahu said he supports the establishment of a, quote, objective commission of inquiry into the attack, but, quote, not a commission of inquiry whose conclusions are already written in advance. This is Netanyahu 101. Victimize himself, blame everything on the, quote, deep state. The deep state is a type of conspiracy that actually regularly ties to anti-Semitism. Jews and the deep state are kind of the same genre of conspiracy. And Netanyahu loves talking about the deep state. He has railed against, quote, deep state bureaucrats in literally the speech that I was just referencing. And in Israel, members of state commissions of inquiry are usually appointed by the Supreme Court's Chief Justice. So I call bullshit on Netanyahu. I know that there is information about October 7th and the intelligence failures that led to it that Netanyahu doesn't want us to know. And I know that he's aware it's game over for him. There's no coming back from what's happened. The state of Israel is never going to return to any sort of serious international status that it held before. It had relationships with countries that you'd never think the state of Israel would be normalized with. They were moving forward. Like before October 7th, Israel was entering a position in the world that was unexpected and going to be very positive for them. And had they actually worked towards a two-state solution, which, mind you, virtually nobody in the country actually supports, things would have been different, and there would have been a much more peaceful and prosperous situation for the people in the state of Israel and for Jewish people around the world who are unfortunately tied to the state of Israel by the state of Israel. This country took the star that they put on us during the Holocaust and put it on their flag. Like the Israeli flag that they put on tanks that blow shit up has the Star of David that had the fucking Juden word on it to identify us in the Holocaust. You don't think that's kind of fucked up of them? Like, I'm not bombing anybody. I'm not starving anybody, but they're dragging me into this because the ethno-religion that is coded into my DNA is what they want to use as an excuse to fucking kill people. I'm not in on it. A lot of young people aren't in on it. A lot of people across the board are absolutely abhorred by what's happening, and they're abhorred by the fact that we are paying for it. And the next Democratic nominee for president is going to be somebody who comes out as virulently opposed to Israel's extremist government and their genocidal actions. With Bulwark, I'm Cam Kasky.